You ever find yourself pulling out your hair saying, these jobs just don't fit? Hey there, Daniel Hartman, Community Machinery, Sackville, New Brunswick. I know when I've been working for other people, when I've been thinking about being self-employed, when I have been self-employed, I've had a lot of times where there's been jobs that have just driven me crazy. And sometimes that's where my love of tools comes in, because having those tools makes it a lot easier to do a lot of different jobs and do them effectively, efficiently, enjoyably. But really what it comes down to is right off the bat with someone asking, hey, what's the budget? Especially being self-employed, and if you're especially a one-person show, asking that right from the get-go is a huge thing, because a lot of times people want a $5 solution instead of a $500,000, $100,000 solution, and really knowing to say, hey, really our entry-level projects, I mean, right now, I don't quote anything under $300, as far as if someone's not willing to take the chance that it's going to cost $300 to complete something, how can I really make phone calls to price out material and think about anything else in that job? Because usually when I start thinking about someone's project, it takes hours of my time. So I really want to be protective of that time, when that's one of the things that there's a finite amount of in this physical dimension. And anyhow, so really asking that budget, because I know there have been times in the past where I've gone for lunch with someone to discuss a project, it turns into a 2-hour conversation only to find out there was never a budget. Next item on the list is really being clear on drawings and design time. Some people say, oh, we'll figure it out as we go. It'll be easy. Well, if it was that easy, they'd make drawings right from the beginning. They'd already know the materials. But being really specialized in this stuff, sometimes it does really just everything falls in place, perfect. But that's what, maybe one job out of 10. If it's a job that I do all the time, sure, I'm gonna know the kind of materials I'll want and where to get those materials. But if it's anything out of the ordinary, not so much. And if it's something I'm not familiar with, the project can sit on the shop floor for a long time while we're really letting those ideas come to the surface. And that's not really efficient. And really on a project like that, you can have someone looking over your shoulder the whole time to make sure it's what they expect. Is that really going to be a great fit? In my life, it isn't. The one way I would say this could possibly work is say, hey, the day rate is so much, as far as, $1,000 a day. And if you want to come, pay for half a day up front. We'll see where we're at in half a day. And if you like it, then you can pay me a full day rate at the beginning of every day. Or maybe you decide it's worth taking a risk. It's easy enough work. There's not that much of a high expectation, and just get paid at the end of every week. And the person shows up, looks at the progress, and if there's anything on their side as far as agreements they need to make or questions they need to answer, that they need to do that on a really timely basis, because otherwise that project could end up tying up shop space and mental space, as far as just sitting around and also just being like stuck energy. So next thing on the list is having permission to innovate or improve a design or the manufacturing of a product. So on the manufacturing side, that might be anything from, I know I've had projects before where there was pieces that were added to the ends of steel tubes with radius corners, and there were blocks of steel, and to blend and to match those radiuses, it took hours of time, and there's no way to reach out to whoever engineered it and say, hey, can we make a modification? Can we weld the piece inside the tube? Is it really that critical? Is there a different way to do this? And really having the end user or the purchaser recognize the cost associated with a few strokes of a pen or a computer mouse as far as the design, and not realizing how that translates into the manufacturing environment. And a lot of times, things might just be an inch different from being able to fit in a machine, which is the difference of punching holes or drilling holes, which might take 10 times as long. So there's a lot of efficiency there. And on the design side of it, if someone comes with a really poor design, and I wouldn't want to have my name on that thing, and you wouldn't want to have your name on that thing, well, that makes it a lot tougher to make that job viable. As far as every job I do, I want to have it so I can promote that job, and I can be really proud of it. And I also want when someone promotes and says, hey, this job was done by Dan and I'm really happy with it, that someone will look at it and say, oh wow, it's not just the manufacturing of that thing, it's also the design. This thing is so well rounded and so well thought up that that's the person I'm going to seek out. Because I know I've had my judgments in the past where I've seen a project someone has done and maybe they were just giving a friend a hand, but even just that they were involved in it, it's with a couple little projects that aren't well designed or well executed, or whether people are involved and you're only doing small components, it's an easy way for people to get the wrong idea of the kind of work that can be produced. So, next thing is, actually this touches on something we said in the last point, is jobs we want to showcase and do more of. So, there's a lot of things that I post on Instagram. There's some projects that come through the shop that never get posted on Instagram because it's something, say, wow, I'm taking a certain amount of work for a client, and there's certain things that I do because they provide a certain work volume that's valuable at this stage, but it's something I wouldn't want to do long term. It's something I wouldn't want people to know that's going on here. So the more projects, there are things that we would want to do over and over again. Those are the things to showcase, to get in people's mind's eye, and to have some refinement, and just to be practicing those projects. That's all great stuff that fits really well. So the next thing is, as my friend Craig says, when your client does backflips, that's what you want at the end of the job. It's just raving about how great a job you did. So having a testimonial, having a referral, having appreciation for that. And actually, we're going to probably come back to that point towards the end. So the next thing is having the client really clear on where the project adds value to their life. Usually, I work for other businesses. That's what we do here at Community Machinery for the most part. And being a business-to-business business, a lot of times people have an expected return. They know there's going to be more efficiency, but there's a lot of different ways we can boil down efficiency and profit margin and where that profit actually comes from. So the number one way is if people work safer. There's no time loss, there's no accidents. I know the arborists in town here I work with, Woodpecker Tree Care, we've made some different checker plate steps for the tongues of the wood chippers so people can climb up on the machine easily, and there's a nice clear place to step. And they've actually added a little bit of sand or abrasive into that so when it's wet, it's not so slippery, and doing little things like that. Or we've added some chute deflectors on the machine, which is a nice little design thing as far as the design has evolved since the older chippers to the newer chipper, and not having to climb up on a machine, loosen a big wing nut, adjust the chute, tighten the wing nut, see if the chips are deflected where they want to be thrown. If it's a new operator, they might not know what angle exactly they want to set that up for, blowing the chips in the truck or out onto a wood pile. So having that adjustable right with the rest of the controls on the machine, that adds a lot of value and safety. So that really improves morale. It increases worker retention, especially in a really competitive labor market. So the next thing is making jobs a lot simpler for people, so there's less scrap, less hidden defects, and those things can really come on the end where you might think, oh, there's lots of money in the bank, we've been selling like crazy, but next thing you know, oh, there's a bunch of defects, someone's asking for a refund, someone's threatening to litigate, and that can cost a whole lot as far as not doing that proactive stuff on the front end. So next thing is making jobs more enjoyable. Then it's easier to find people to work with. We're more likely to be working with people we'd consider our friends. It doesn't feel like work. It's just something we do in the day because we really love it. And that is really the kinds of things we aspire to here at Community Machinery, where a lot of times having conversations, whether it's like Woodpecker's a great example where sometimes we socialize, sometimes there's a work party, sometimes we cross paths at the farmer's market or wherever else, and we talk about little things that are going on. And maybe it's at Ultimate Frisbee, I'm having a conversation with Rory about what little things are improved or not working well or could be improved more. And we come up with little ideas here and there. And the next thing is actually practicing inspiring greater internal improvements in an organization. So the more we're used to working with someone that can do things that we aren't able to do, the easier it is to have a really fluid design process, to make quick, easy, small improvements. And then when there's a big improvement, it's easy to know who to go to, how much it's likely going to cost, that they stay on budget, that there's an easy way to have a conversation, that they reach out when there's some design considerations that they didn't know at the beginning that I think we are going to want to know more about. So those are all huge wins, and they start with the really small projects. And that's, I guess, coming back into having those frequent conversations. Short feedback loops is a big deal in any business. And having that between different businesses is an even bigger deal, because that is what's really, those partnerships outside our organizations, especially if they're not costing $100 every time we get on the phone, where that's the kind of stuff where we can really leverage those relationships. So next thing for jobs that are a really great fit is having the skill, having the time, and readily accessible material for those jobs. So having things that are repeater jobs, as far as making something like a steel frame, I've done that a lot. Making an aluminum frame, not as much. So stainless steel frames, I've done that a lot as well, except there's a lot more material expense, there's a lot more diligence in terms of making sure things don't warp, and material costs, and just the labor time. As far as stainless steel, you're gonna have to cut the material a lot slower and use a lot more coolant. So knowing what those concerns are and really focusing in on certain projects where, for the most part, I like building things out of steel, and some components I like making out of aluminum and stainless steel when that's a really good fit. But I also, going back to the earlier point, as far as permission to innovate or improve on a design, sometimes being able to have a say of what material I think would work in certain spots and be able to have an informed conversation, that's really valuable to me, because that's part of what I want to bring into my work. And I think that's something that we all can really aspire to. So next point is, actually there's one point I missed. One other thing that makes certain projects a really great fit is people who have social influence. If they want something developed, if there's a strategic alliance that can be formed. Years ago, I partnered up with Broad Fork Farm. We built a compost spreader, and we didn't have a formal agreement. They had a fairly large social media following on, I think they had somewhere around 3,000 subscribers on Instagram. They had a popular blog that a lot of people would follow. And I know, even though that never became a project, 6-7 years later, still getting, maybe it's 6 years, anyhow, still getting regular inquiries about people wanting to design, people wanting to know if they can buy a compost spreader, or people wanted to know if they could have us do something similar to what was done. So those relationships are always great, as far as people who have a reach that we don't, or understand a market, or can help develop a product, and also have the clarity and the ability to test and give feedback back to us, which is going back to that short feedback loop concept again. And it doesn't really benefit us if we develop a product, put a lot of time into it, and we either don't hear back from whoever we built it for, or if, I'm trying to think of what the other point is, whether we hear back, or maybe we don't hear the right information back, or we're not visiting one another and throwing ideas around. So there's more value that can be put in those relationships. So the next thing is an advance deposit, which we talked a little bit about, as far as if someone doesn't have the design or the drawing, paying in advance, that's a big deal, because then it shows they're putting their money where their mouth is, as far as they might not want to take the time to make a drawing, but they're letting their money make up for their ignorance, or maybe it's just they know what's worth something to them and what's not. So an advance deposit, pay on delivery, or a bonus for taking a risk of waiting to be paid once an item is tested or completed. And the more value we bring, the more there's different spots to really leverage and say, hey, if you want 30-day terms or 90-day terms, adding some interest as far as 2% on overdue accounts per month. So that really adds up, that 24% a year of value. And when people stretch terms of, I know right now all our invoices are marked payable upon receipt, and it's one of those things, having a clear contract and really, anyhow, that's going to be a separate video. Stay tuned on that one. So really recognizing the value we're providing people, that's a big deal. So next thing is clients insisting on leaving a glowing review at the end. I know recently we've done a little drive for Google reviews, and it's interesting how some people are all too eager and ready to write up a review, click 5 stars, whatever it is. And there's other people, and some of those people I've known my whole life, but they just, for whatever reason, haven't practiced that gratitude culture, don't know what to say, feel like it's uncomfortable, who knows what it is. And I know they would be there for me in a minute, but maybe the one thing that they aren't so inclined to do is leave a Google review. Maybe they're just paranoid about putting themselves out on the internet, who knows. But it's one of those things, as far as knowing ideal clients would really put themselves out there and share their experience, try and enlighten other people as to what they might experience, or to nurture different aspects of the business that they might realize when doing a review. Oh, there's a little spot where you could strengthen a certain point of your business, as far as maybe it's getting invoices out on time or any other number of things. So next thing is clients recruiting their most trusted friends as new clients. So when someone appreciates your project that much, whatever you produce, that is such a great thing. And when we work in a way with clients that they might not be able to work with us again because it might not relate to their world, but when they want their friends to have that same experience, and I know there's certain companies or certain things where I just love giving referrals for certain people that have really gone out of their way for me, and just try and do whatever I can to show my gratitude, show my appreciation. So I know that's part of the culture we try and build here, and one of the things we're also working on that'll be a future video is the gratitude wall, trying to find some spot to make a little space to really make that part of the culture, as far as recognizing other people's gifts, uplifting those gifts, bringing them to the surface. And then when there's times of challenge, like, oh, of course, we're going to go talk with this person and have a good laugh, and then we're going to talk with this person and we're going to make a really neat, concise plan, and then we're going to talk with this person who's going to help us put that plan into execution mode. So it's not even really, you could say it's gratitude because it feels really great, but then you can also say, oh, this really uplifts and helps actualize a vision. Anyhow, let's get into some pretty out there philosophy stuff that we're going to cover in the future. For now, this is going to be a long video. Thanks for watching to the end. Please like, please subscribe, please comment below. Try and look at those comments. If you really feel the need to reach out and want to make sure I get the message, feel free to email. If you're really excited about emailing or sending a message through Instagram or whatever, you'll figure out how to do that. Thanks again, and until next time, we're gonna have some more content, because these things are great practice to get in front of the camera. And thanks so much for watching.